All right, so today we're diving into one of the most elegant, really powerful ideas in all of modern biology. It's called kin selection. And it's this amazing concept that seems to perfectly explain selfless behavior in nature. But, and this is the really wild part, it's also the story of how a genius theory was basically killed by the very guy who invented it.
Yeah, the guy at the heart of all this is William Hamilton. Back in the 60s, he comes up with this just beautiful mathematical formula. And it looks like it solves this massive puzzle in evolution. But then, and you just can't make this stuff up, he spends the rest of his career basically arguing against his own brilliant idea, questioning it, doubting it, and in the end, pretty much turning his back on it completely.
So that's the big question, right? How does one of the greatest solutions in biology just unravel in the hands of its own creator? To really get what's going on here, we've got to rewind, way back, to a problem that was a real thorn in the side for Charles Darwin himself.
You know, Darwin's whole theory of natural selection gets boiled down to that famous phrase, survival of the fittest. But Darwin himself saw a huge problem with it, a hole in his own theory. He called it his one special difficulty. And that difficulty? Kindness. We're talking about altruism, right? Think about it. If evolution is this brutal dog-eat-dog world of competition, it's all about surviving and having kids, then why on earth would any animal do something that helps another animal out, especially if it puts itself at risk? It just didn't add up. It seemed to completely contradict the core of his idea.
And the best example of this, the one that really stumped everyone, was social insects. Just picture a beehive. You've got thousands upon thousands of worker bees that are sterile. They can't reproduce, they're never going to pass on their own genes. Yet they work their entire lives and will literally die to protect the queen. From a survival of the fittest point of view, that's just insane. It makes zero sense.
So for like 100 years, this problem just sat there, a huge question mark in biology. And then in 1964, this young biologist, William Hamilton, shows up. And he doesn't just come up with some fluffy theory. Oh no, he brings math. He provides this incredibly sharp, clean mathematical answer that just changed the entire game.
And there it is, Hamilton's rule. It looks so simple, doesn't it? But this little equation was nothing short of revolutionary. What it suggested was mind-blowing, that altruism, this selfless kindness, wasn't selfless at all. Nope. It was actually a super clever form of genetic self-interest, the ultimate selfish act, all hidden in this neat little formula.
Okay, so let's break this down, because it's actually pretty intuitive. C is the cost. That's what it costs you, the giver, to do the nice thing. B is the benefit to the one you're helping. And R is the secret sauce. That's your relatedness, basically how much of your DNA you share. So what the rule says is that a selfless act makes evolutionary sense only if the benefit to your relative times how related you are outweighs the cost to you. It's all a cold, hard calculation. And suddenly, with this one simple rule, all these confusing behaviors just clicked. Everything made sense. Those sterile worker bees, they sacrifice themselves for the queen because she's basically a gene-copying machine for their family. The bird that screams a warning call, it's risking its neck, sure, but it's saving its siblings who are carrying copies of its own genes. It was incredible. It felt like a master key that unlocked the secrets of social behavior.
So Hamilton's rule just took over. It became a bedrock of modern biology, especially in this new field called sociobiology. It was the answer. And here's where our story takes a sharp turn. The guy who wrote the rule, Hamilton himself, started to think he got it wrong. Or at the very least, that his beautiful, simple formula was missing the bigger picture.
And you can see his thinking shift right here. He started to back away from the idea that kinship, your family connection, was the only thing that mattered. He started to feel like his own theory was just too clean, too simple, It tried to boil down the incredibly messy, complicated dance of nature into a single, neat little bit of math. And he started to believe that real life, real evolution, was just way, way more complex than that.
So his interest just exploded in new directions. He got totally fascinated by other ways cooperation happens, like symbiosis, where totally unrelated species team up, or this wild idea of horizontal gene transfer, where genes can literally leap from one organism to another. He even started looking seriously at group selection, the idea that a whole group of good guys can beat a group of selfish guys, which was an idea he'd originally shot down.
Now, for a long time, Hamilton kind of kept these doubts to himself, in letters and talks with colleagues. But here's the thing.
he wasn't the only one having second thoughts. Another absolute giant in biology, E.O. Wilson, and this is key. Wilson was the guy who made kin selection famous in his legendary 1975 book, Sociobiology, and he ended up rejecting it too, but way more publicly.
And this timeline really lays out how this whole consensus fell apart. For decades, kin selection was treated like gospel. It was just fact. But then, in the 90s, you start to see the cracks forming with Hamilton's own doubts. And then, bam, the earthquake hits in 2012. That's when Wilson publishes a book basically calling the theory that he made famous a total failure. And that just lit a fire under the whole field, a debate that is still raging today.
So, where does that leave kin selection? And us? Well, this isn't one of those simple stories where a theory is right or wrong. It's way more interesting than that. It's a story about how science actually works, how ideas get born, become famous, and then sometimes get challenged by the very minds that brought them into the world.
I mean, go look in any biology textbook today. Hamilton's rule is in there. A lot of scientists still swear by it, they defend it passionately, but it's definitely not the unquestioned law it used to be. The idea that once tied everything together is now a scientific battleground. And the craziest part is that the fight was started by its own creators.
And that leaves us with this one, kinda heavy final thought. This whole story, it's not really just about bees or genes or math. It's about science itself. It makes you wonder, right? If one of the most celebrated, most elegant ideas in evolution is doubted by the very people who came up with it, then how solid is any of the ground we're standing on? What does that tell us about our search for truth?